Hello, I'm here to talk to you about sovereign states and both the absolutist and the constitutionalist form of them. The first thing I want to remind you of is the definition of sovereignty. Sovereignty for a state, for a country, means that they are, in theory, independent from outside interference and also have the power to command their subjects or citizens with all political power vested in them in whatever areas that's understood to encompass. Right. So the sovereign states can be in two varieties here, and they both have different claims to legitimacy, the legitimacy to rule. The first type is the absolutist monarchies, absolute monarchies, and I have two examples here up on the screen. One of them is Louis XIV, who is reported to have said, when he was king of France, "I am the state, l'état c'est moi." And the other is Frederick William I, king in Prussia, who said, "I must be served with life and limb, with house and wealth, with honor and conscience. Everything must be committed except eternal salvation. That belongs to God, but all else is mine." So it was nice of him to leave something for God, of course, with this claimed absolute power. The absolute power is of kings is a claim that everything political that the government does is vested in the king. They have the power over everything that the state does. And one thing that's important to just point out is that these are not the same as totalitarian governments. Totalitarian governments try to control every aspect of life. You can think of the Nazis or the Soviet Union here. Absolute monarchies in the 1700s and 1600s before that can't really claim to do that. They just simply don't have the money and the machinery, the state power machinery to do that. So they do the things that normal governments do in this time, but they try to vest it all in one king. Okay, you can really even make the argument that our government today has more power in our lives than absolute monarchies did at this time, because governments just have more personnel and technology and everything to influence the lives of their citizens today. Now, the claim to legitimacy that the absolute monarchies make is oftentimes, anyway, the divine right of kings. In other words, God has invested the right of rule in the king. He has total power, and he is accountable to God alone. Okay, or in the case of queens and empresses, they're accountable to God alone. Okay, and so that's the divine right theory of monarchy. Constitutional monarchies are different. They have power divided between a king and an assembly. Like in Britain in this time, what eventually emerges out of the Glorious Revolution is shared power between the monarchy and parliament. Okay, and in a constitutional monarchy, usually the claim to legitimacy is some kind of traditional power of the monarchy and the assembly. Okay, so it doesn't really work to think about a divine right monarchy, a constitutional monarchy, because the king is not claiming total power. Okay, so the states in this period did a few important things. They made enforced laws, including the religious and economic laws. They controlled the military and war, and they collected taxes. And so we can take a little closer look at these things here. First of all, making and enforcing laws. One area that governments often tried to do this in was religion. Every country had an official church. The church was under the control of the monarch. Even in Catholic countries, they couldn't claim to be the head of the church, but they could exercise a lot of power over the church in their countries. Okay, So every country has an official church. There's usually some kind of discrimination, either mild or severe, against people who don't belong to the official church. Also key is the control of warfare. Okay, no sovereign state is going to want nobles fighting each other. Okay, if they can, they're going to ban nobles from having private armies. We've seen a lot of wars in Lesson 1.2 and the crisis of the 17th century, and so this seems to be important for the emergence of these sovereign states. The states need more power to collect the taxes to pay for these wars. They also provide a justification for the kings to have the kind of power they have. They claim that only a strong king can bring order. Okay, and so the controlling of warfare is really important. And the armies are just getting bigger and bigger. Here you see a picture of a depiction of the Battle of Fleurus in 1690. Armies are getting bigger and bigger, and so we see that war is getting more and more expensive. Okay, and then, as I've said, also collecting taxes and borrowing money. The military, the monarchy itself, and the bureaucracy, all these things were expensive. It was expensive to run one of these states. It was expensive to pay for the monarch's court and everything. And so the collection of taxes and the borrowing of money to pay for all this was important. And so that's a big part of the key powers. We also want to think about how this all works, the machinery of power. They appoint, generally speaking, bureaucracies and appoint lots of officials to make this stuff run, to administer the army, to collect the taxes, to administer the finances, things like that. Okay. And then finally, there's the symbols of power. Most famously, the Palace of Versailles is improved upon by Louis XIV and is made into his permanent residence. And this is a painting of the Palace of Versailles. It's this enormous place where he lives, and he wants nobles to live there. He doesn't really get that many of them to live there, but he wants them to come and live there. And it's this incredibly opulent and glorious palace. Okay, here's a couple other depictions of that. Another example would be St. Petersburg, the new capital built by Peter the Great in Russia. Okay, and these are supposed to awe the citizens with the power of the monarch. So I hope this helps you to understand some of the challenges, some of the ways in which the sovereign states of this period worked, that you'll read more about in the lesson.